Hello, hiya, it's Mr. Neil here, and in this video we're going to be looking at website design and development, focusing in on two specific elements of CSS. These are positioning and layout. From the core specification, you need to be able to describe, exemplify and implement efficient inline, internal and external CSS using grouping, descendant selectors to control appearance and positioning. We're going to focus in on 5 different CSS properties within this video: display, float, clear, height and width. In this video I will take a website about ice cream flavours from what it looks like initially on the left hand side of your screen to what we get it to look like at the end on the right hand side of your screen. During this video we'll introduce you to 3 new CSS properties. These are float, and this specifies whether an element should float to the right hand side or the left hand side of a container element. Clear specifies what should happen with the element that is next to a floating element. And display specifies how an element will be displayed. In this video we'll look at block and inline. Later, when we focus on JavaScript, we will look at none. Here we have a page that's going to be all about different flavours of ice cream. First thing we're going to do is we're going to work on our header. Now, as our header will be across all pages on this website, we're going to do the CSS for our header in our external CSS file. The first thing we want to do with our image within our header is reduce the size of it. So this image is located in the header tag, and we're going to reduce its width 150 pixels. So our header image is now a lot smaller. This image here I don't want where it currently is. I want it over on the right hand side up in line with the header text, ice cream flavours. So to move an element we use the command float. In the command float we can either float left or we can float right, and right will take it to the right side of the element that it is within. So this image is within our header, so it's going to take it to the right side of our header when I run it. So our image is now on the right hand side of the header, but you can see that everything is kind of jumbled around. And that is because when you're floating an element, the browser in HTML kind of lose track of where it is on the page, and it starts interfering with other elements on the page. To stop elements interfering with each other, we use a property called clear. And it's always a good idea to ensure that your header, your nav, your main and your footer do not interfere with each other. So we'll set them all to clear, and the only value for clear that we use is both. So our header image no longer interferes with our nav bar. But our header image is not in line with the text. You can see that there's a gap. And this is to do with how elements display. An element can display in 2 different ways. It can display as a block, or it can display inline. By default, most text elements display as a block. That means although they may take up a small space on our screen, the actual element takes up the full width of our page. So to get our header image up in line with our text, we need to say that we want the text to be displayed in line to allow the image to pop up. So our text ice cream flavours is in H1, so we're going to say that H1 within the header we want to display in line. And you'll see now that our image is in line with our text. The header itself, the background colour, doesn't come for the full height of the image, so we're going to add a height to our header. And let's say we want the header, let's say we want the height of the header to be 100 pixels, and our header is now of an adequate height. If I were to increase the size of the browser, you can see the website starts to get distorted, and that's because it's adapting to the size of my browser. So we can actually size the size of our whole website by adding a width to our body, and of course the body tag is where all the other elements appear. So we're going to go to body, and we're going to say we want the width of the body to be 800 pixels. And now no matter the size of my window, the body will always remain 800 pixels. It may look slightly weird that it's off to the left hand side of the browser window, so we can add in the code margin auto. And margin auto means that the space either side of our website will be the same, so it will automatically be in the centre of the window. Let's now turn our attention to the main section of this page. The main section of this page includes information about luxury vanilla ice cream and a picture of that ice cream. It contains information about sticky toffee ice cream and an image of that ice cream. The first thing we're going to do is reduce the size of these images. Now, as these images are within the index page, I'm going to apply the CSS internally. And if we look at these images, we'll see that I've got a class attached to them called flavor image. So I'm going to go to my internal CSS, and I'm going to say flavor image, and we'll say I want the height of these to be 200 pixels, and the images have now updated to 200 pixels. Let's say I want the image to be to the right hand side of the screen, so we're going to go float right. Whilst both images are to the right hand side of the screen, because images by default display inline, they're starting to interfere with each other. So we're actually going to create a div around each of our two ice creams. So we call this class equals flavor, and we will close it after there, and then we will create it again for our next ice cream. And we will say that for each flavour, we want it to be clear both, so that each of these divs do not interfere with each other. When we refresh now, we can see our luxury vanilla and our sticky toffee do not interfere with each other. I want the images of luxury vanilla and sticky toffee to be in line with the content that they have produced. To do this, I need to add a div around the text I'm referring to. In this case, the heading to and paragraph about it. So we'll get call class, and we'll get call this flavor text. And we're going to close it after the text. And then I'm going to do the same for sticky toffee. Closing it after it. And ultimately, we want the flavor text class to display in line with the other element. When we refresh that, nothing has happened. And that's because we can see here that the text is actually taking up the full width of the div. So we need to reduce the size of the div down. So I'm going to specify a width. I'm going to say 500 pixels. And we're going to refresh, and as you can see, nothing again has happened. So I'm lastly going to float this image to the left, and there we have our two ice creams next to each other. In this example, we've demonstrated how to use display, float, and clear. Now that you have looked at how to implement positioning using CSS, why don't you attempt the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry website? Using the instructions and the screenshots provided within the REPL project, see if you can implement the design.